Yes. Yes, I can see it. Everyone else can see it?
Yep.
Awesome.
And
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Murad, for coming tonight and talking to our BioBuilder Club teams. Many of our teams are mentored by wonderful UCB scientists like Dr. Peter Hani on the call here.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to be able to share your education career journey and what working at UCB looks like with our students. So I will let you take it from here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to do this. I was very excited to be part of this, and hopefully it'll be fun for everyone. Can you see the slides correctly? You don't feel like presenter mode or anything weird?
It's displaying great on my end.
Okay, good. Perfect. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll will Even though I'm a Leo and an only child, usually don't love talking about myself a lot, but I will do it today, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you who I am, what I'm doing, how I got here to do what I'm doing, and answer any questions you might have. Uh, and I wrote a title for this because I would like to talk about how I built a career in biotech by taking risks at many different times throughout my career, beginning with early education. And I wanted to give a brief introduction to who I am. I was born and raised in Argentina a long, long time ago. I did go to school there. I did a master's in biotechnology at a state university, but I did focus in neuroscience. At the time, I was doing circadian rhythms research. And towards the end of my master's, I had a project I was working on. We're trying to publish in collaboration with people at UMass Medical School here in Boston, close to Boston in Worcester. So I moved for with an exchange program for a few months to wrap up some experiments because we didn't have some of the equipment we needed in Argentina, and try to publish that. And while I was here, I talked to a few people, and I was basically convinced to apply for a PhD program. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. So applied for that, moved back to Argentina, waited for my letters, got accepted, packed a couple of bags, and moved from Buenos Aires to Worcester, Massachusetts. And fast forward 25 years, give or take. Now I'm at UCB, which is, as some of you know, a large pharmaceutical company, which is an international company, but has a big presence in the US and a big research presence in Boston, where I'm head of discovery biology. I wanted to, I just, even though, and I wrote down here, even though we're not talking about AI today, I wanted to let you know that I tried actually more than 3 times to ask ChatGPT to make a little picture of a map and a voyage from Argentina to Boston. And as you can see, I couldn't get it to do it right. It was a very simple ask. So it puts Argentina in North America, Boston in Africa. So even though we're not talking about AI today and how AI is going to take all of our jobs, I personally don't think that's going to happen anytime soon based on my experience with this. Instead of looking for the right picture, I figure I put all the wrong pictures I got out of that exercise for your entertainment. Um, the first leap that I got here, the first risk I took early on in my career was when I finished high school. I went to college and I decided to pursue a career in biotechnology, which was a non-existent industry in Argentina in the 90s and is still today. It barely exists, right? Um, I have a cartoon here that I took from the UK education blog on how to choose. You know, a lot of people tell you how to choose your career path, and says to avoid these 3 common mistakes. Well, apparently did. I made 2 of the mistakes they ask you to avoid here because uh, they say you shouldn't ignore industry numbers. I have no idea what the biotech industry was at the time. They say not to go for your passion, which, like my career is based on basically going for my passion, which was biotech and research and pharma. The one thing I did right, I think, is that I did not choose this career based on money over everything. At the time, a career in an industry that didn't exist was guaranteed to make me no money, right? So, but I went for it anyways, and I guess the lesson I learned from that later on is that passion first and certainty later kind of paid off in this case, right? Uh, but we all make decisions differently and based on different with the different circumstances and different times in our lives, right? But I do strongly believe that following your passion should, in theory, pay off at the end. Um, the the next risk I took was to move to the U.S. from Boston, from Argentina, specifically from a beautiful picture of Buenos Aires here, which is my home city, and the ugliest picture I could find of Worcester, Massachusetts. That was a big unknown and a big change. I did not know what I was getting into when I did that. Um, but did that and spent 5 years there doing my PhD in neuroscience um, at a time where the pharmaceutical industry was starting to move to the Boston area and become bigger and bigger. Biotech. What it did exist, of course, but it was not the boom or the economy driver that it is today in the city of Boston, right? Um, so I did not know at the time that I was going to end up in the biotech industry. I thought I was coming here for a PhD in neuroscience and then pursue a career in academia. That was my linear idea of a career path for myself. Um, but while doing that, I had to adapt to a new country, a different culture, language barriers, financial uncertainty. I came here with almost nothing, right? Doing taxes, no idea. But taking risks at the end of the time, at the end of the day, does mean sometimes being uncomfortable, you know, and that's okay because that's a lot of people will tell us how growth happens, and once you go through something like that, I guess you just desensitize yourself to the dangers of taking risks sometimes, and continue to do it to some extent throughout your career, and it makes it a lot more fun, I think, at the end of the day. Um, many many PhD students aim for academic careers, and that's what I did, right? So I thought I was going to become a professor somewhere after doing my PhD, do a postdoc somewhere and some good university, and publish a few papers, and then become a professor, which is a beautiful career, and I really admire it. And that's what I thought. We tend to think it's more comfortable to think about career paths as a linear path, right? And we know from previous generations and or people older than us what comes after and how they did it. So we try to follow that path. Um, so that's what I thought I was going to do. But at the time I was doing my PhD in the Boston area, I just kept hearing about a new pharmaceutical companies moving here, a new biotech is opening, a new pharmaceutical this, pharmaceutical that, biotech. So I figure, how do I don't know anyone in the industry, how do I even learn about what is this, how I didn't know what kind of research they did. All I heard was that the research was not good and that if you go to pharma, you could never come back to academia. So I was thinking, if I have that set career path, if I try this for a little bit and then they don't allow me back in, like I just, everything I wanted to do, right, I just can't do it, right? But at the time, I thought, there's only one way to find out. So I found that Novartis in Cambridge, Novartis is probably now a big Swiss pharmaceutical company, was one of the biggest and earliest to move to Boston. had a fairly new postdoctoral program. So I applied to it, I got accepted. Um, Everyone told me not to do it. Everyone at school told me not to do it. I wanted to do it. And part of it is, to be honest, is like, it's going to sound quirky, but um, when I was a kid, when they asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say, I want to be a pharmacist. Don't ask me why, since I was a kid, because I would go to the pharmacy in my hometown. We did not have large pharmacy chains like CVS and Walgreens. It was like small family owned. And every pharmacy had a little lab in the back where they would make little ointments and creams and things. Um, so I assumed that pharmacists make medicines. And I was obsessed with like making pills and making medications for people. So I thought a pharmacist did that. Then I learned later on, growing up, that that's not what happens, right? It's more, even though it's a great career to be a pharmacist, it's more like a retail kind of environment, which I grew up in a retail environment at home, the family business, and I did not want to do that ever again. So because of that, and always been in my mind that I wanted to make medicine, I wanted to make medicine. I was like, well, maybe working, learning now how to do this might be, the way to do it. So went to Novartis to do my postdoc, learn was able to learn drug discovery early on uh, in a very large pharmaceutical company, which I always say that's like learning how to drive in a truck, right? You can drive anything else after that. So very large research environment, and I did learn a lot there. I learned about teams and collaboration, a lot of things. Um, and later on, as time goes by, now we're in an environment in pharma and biotech where uh, collaborations between pharma and academia are key to drive anything in both sides, right? So, long are the times where if you go to pharma, you cannot go back to academia. Now we're all collaborating, we're all doing science together. So, I guess the lesson that I wrote here is don't let these sort of outdated perceptions of how things work hold you back, because sometimes, we live in a very in an environment that is ever changing, right? um, and to be really skeptical of what we call conventional wisdom. Not everything that people tell you is a bad idea is a bad idea. Sometimes you have to try for yourself. Uh, Now that I was in this comfy large pharmaceutical company, learning how to do drug discovery, I'm in Cambridge. This is the early 2000s, a new biotech company popping up around the corner, like every other day, basically, right? And you hear about these companies with like 10 people, 5 people, 20 people getting funding for these crazy ideas and all these new technologies, right? That sounds like science fiction. So of course, being in that, surrounded by that, I jumped from Novartis to a very tiny biotech, and it was not a garage like in the picture, but it was a basement in Central Square in Cambridge with 20 people in it and some money to work on this crazy idea. So this company was called Agios Pharmaceuticals. It's now a multi-billion dollar company. But that was a huge risk as well, because I sort of knew, but I didn't understand to the full extent of it, that uh, the large majority of biotech companies don't make it, right? So gone was the time of job security and now it's in an environment that we didn't know if we had money to do research for past 6 months from the day, right? So that was a huge risk, but I learned a lot there. In a smaller environment, you get to wear many hats, and you get to do things that you didn't know you were going to have to learn how to do, and work with what you have to make an idea happen, basically, right? Um, so sometimes these tiny companies that we have so many of those here could bring huge opportunities. You do have a larger amount of responsibility, that is not directly proportional to the size of your teams and the company, and a lot more visibility. You can't hide from anyone there. And I would argue a much faster career growth because you are really out there trying to make it happen and everyone can see that. Um, After that, I enjoyed that. It's a lot of work, but I enjoyed that so much that I moved to smaller and smaller companies the next few jobs, um, and help grow different teams and try different projects in these smaller companies. And these were, at this point, it was from uh, not very well informed risks that I was taking to a little more calculated risk, because now I kind of like knew what was doing and what I wanted to do, and kept increasing the risk as I moved to smaller and smaller companies, but trying to make sure that was within reason, right? And that doing those kind of things can lead to really good opportunity and fast growth. Um, After seeing how all of this biotech uh, worked and how people would just pitch ideas and get funding for it and then start a company, I tried myself to launch a company with a group of other scientists. And this is another experience that, we are lucky to be in an environment here in Cambridge where this happens every day, right? So we figure, we have a good idea, we have a good team, let's try to make this happen. Um, Talk to a bunch of venture capital firms and workshop our idea with other scientists and with other investors. This did not work out. We could not launch the company, but did learn a lot in the process and opened the door to other opportunities in the future, where I consulted for venture capital firms on potential investments. So I grew my network of people that I could work with and expanded a little bit the scope of what I could do with my knowledge and my experience. And yes, like I wrote there, like even failed ventures can teach you very valuable skills. So don't be afraid of trying new things. A lot of the people who are very successful today doing things that you don't think you are able to do started by them not knowing 100% if they were able to do it, right? So risks again tend to pay off one way or another. After doing all of that, I ended up at UCB, which is a large pharmaceutical company. So why would I go through all that trouble and then end up at a big company again? And this was another leap in a way, right? And I, as a scientist, I loved what I was doing in biotech. However, to be successful in biotech, you have to be extremely focused on a particular molecule, a particular pathway, a particular disease, and really cannot get distracted thinking or working on other things because you need to make that one thing happen, right? Which is it's a lot of fun and very rewarding. But after doing that for a while, I wanted to expand a little bit my area of expertise and my knowledge. And so far I didn't tell you that detail, but everything I've done until UCB has been done around drug discovery with small molecules, just small traditional molecules. I've never done drug discovery with biologics like antibody drugs or things like gene therapy or peptides or other things. And I really wanted to learn how to do that. And UCB being a larger company and having all of these resources and having all of this large pipeline across all of these types of therapeutics offered a place for me to learn how to do that and to continue to uh, learn about things that I'm very curious and different diseases and different patient populations and different technologies and platforms. So I decided to do that a little over 3 years ago, with the goal to continue to grow as a scientist and adapting to new environments. And this is my take home from that is that, and it's something that I said a little bit at the beginning, is that we tend to think of careers as a linear path, right? You go from A to Z, following this path that others carve for you. And I would argue that if that and that could be great. I mean, it works for a lot of people. But in my case, with the level of curiosity I always had, I couldn't conceive a career like that. I needed to at every step of the way um, be stimulated by new information and new opportunities and new possibilities, right? So that's how I ended up here doing what I do today, and God knows what I'll be doing, a few years from now. Stay tuned. But yeah, so that's a long story long, I guess, of how I got from choosing a career with no future in the place where I was at, wrong place at the wrong time, I guess, right? To ending up at a place like the biotech hub in the Boston area, having all these options and exploring all these options after over 2.5 decades. My key takeaways from this: do take risks. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Always stay open to new opportunities and learn, always learn continuously. Like I try to learn today with AI, making pictures. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Science is always evolving. Failure is for sure part of the process. And do follow your curiosity and your passion. And we hope that that will lead to success. And don't be afraid of what other people tell you. And if you really want to do something, just go for it and commit 100% to it. I leave you there with a couple of inspirational quotes from RuPaul Charles and Helen Keller on taking risks in life. And I would like to thank you and open this to questions.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Did I go too
Students,
fast?
any questions?
And questions about anything, whatever you can think of. It doesn't have to be, could be about myself, about career, about biotech, Worcester, Massachusetts.
I will say I thought it was very interesting. Last year, also when Dr. Roger Pofferman was speaking, he talked about how his career path was very also nonlinear, and it's hard to predict where you'll end up based on where you start. So, um,
Roger had a great career at UCB. I used to report to him. He hired me at UCB actually, and he had a very non-linear career also, taking risks, but at almost for over 20 years in the same company. It's a very similar in spirit, but very different on paper, right?
mhm.
And yeah, I was always very impressed with that and with his career within UCB. But fun enough, now he's at a small biotech company. So he left UCB and works for a small biotech company. So uh, it's the curiosity, uh, kill the cat on the one hand, and build careers for other people.
Do you have any advice for students? Now that there's a lot of information available to students about industry and opportunities and kind of exploring various paths while they're still in high school or early college.
Yeah, well, for I participated for many years at this conference that the NIH, I think they still organize it, where it was focused on early college year students, right? And the idea was to share tools on how to pursue higher degrees because a lot of students for different reasons um, after college not a lot of well, there's a lot of people that pursue, for example, a PhD or a master's degree after college. But when you take D&I into consideration, the populations are not equally represented. And this has to do with many factors. Some people have to go straight to work, but um, a lot of people also don't know the all the paths to financial paths to do this, right? And how universities will cover the cost of tuition for these kind of careers in STEM and offer stipends for people to be able to live throughout those years that it takes to do a master's or a PhD, and a lot of other tools that are usually available through university websites and things like that, right? So you could, I mean, it's worth to mention that I did my entire career for free. I went to public school in Argentina. I came here to university where they pay for my stipend and they pay for my tuition. I'm incredibly grateful for that and very lucky that I could do that, right? Um, but to I would say search for all these tools and information that is available to you to be able to before you think this is not for you for a financial reason or for any other reason, right? So there's a lot of information out there, and universities are not shy about sharing this information with you. You go to their websites and that you can read about it. Um, and yeah, try to be informed and make an informed decision before you think that it's not for you.
I think that's really good advice about assistance and everything offered for education for STEM careers for sure. Any teachers on the line have any questions that they would want to ask on behalf of their students?
I'll ask one.
I
What
know
was the
that voice.
what was the most surprising for you when you came to the US?
In terms of what? Culture?
Yeah, yeah, culture.
Hmm. Well, on day one, we had an office of international students, and we sat down and they welcomed us to the US with a welcome package with basic things about US culture. We had like a picture of a Thanksgiving dinner there. And I don't remember what else because the only thing I can remember is that they showed us a toothbrush and they explained what that was. And yes, that's what I thought. Like, what am I doing with my life? But it was a at the end of the day, it was a great experience. And I don't think they do that anymore. But it was a cultural shock. Yeah, that's for sure. But taxes. I never had to do my taxes before. That was very complicated. That was a
Yeah,
shock as well.
thanks.
And I had to relearn a lot of, I mean, the language for sure, right? I mean, even though I studied English for years of my life, I came here and I couldn't spit out a word. And I did have to retake a lot of my biology classes that things that I already knew in Spanish. I had to take all of those again and have to think about that in a whole different language. So that actually was very useful for me. Given that then you have to read all this information in English anyways and write papers in English and write protocols in English. So the language and the toothbrush for sure.
Toothbrush.
Thanks.
What's your favorite thing about working at UCB, LS?
Yeah, there are a few. Uh, so the one of my favorite things is the reason why I went there, right? And it's the amount of learning. It's like drinking from a fire hose, as some people would say. In the sense that this is a company with 100 years of history, and it's a company that has works on many different indications, has a healthy pipeline of products coming up, a huge number of market launches of products for the size of the company compared to larger compared to any other pharma, right? In the past couple of years, which means that there's an environment of people are being very excited about these things and us seeing our TV commercials, when we're watching TV at home and being like, oh, I work there. So I would say the amount that I'm learning at this stage in my career that I thought, as you move on your career, it gets to a point that you think like, well, I guess I learned everything I had to learn. Now it's just, waiting for retirement. Um, but I'm learning at a pace that is as much, if not more, than at the beginning of my career, and that's what keeps me, going and engaged and entertained. To be honest, I mean, I'm a very curious person. The teams, that we have, incredible teams, very diverse, and diversity of every kind, including diversity of thought, right? And we operate in many geographies. We are all over the world, but our research is mostly in three geographies: US, Belgium, and the UK. Within the US, we are here, North Carolina, and Seattle. So the teams we are all over the time zones, which sometimes could be a little problematic for planning meetings, but we are able, with every project we work on, to come together, people from all of these geographies, form teams, and deliver and learn together about different diseases and different patient populations and different pathways, and people with all sorts of different career paths and expertise, right? So I would say the people are up there, and the diversity of programs and problems and questions we're asking on a daily basis.
That's awesome. Well, I have one more question, and that's I realized that, do you want to say a little bit? I think that maybe some students might not know what like discovery biology means and aren't as familiar with the whole like drug discovery pharmaceutical pipeline. So just
Yeah, I can elaborate a little bit of that. So drug discovery in a nutshell, right? So we is from the moment you think about, or you come up with a question and you say, okay, there's this number of patients that suffer from this particular disease and that is caused by a mutation, this particular gene. What if, right? That's how you start, right, with the process. What if we design a drug with an antibody, whatever, that blocks or activates this pathway and results in a benefit for the patient? Like, can this be a patient solution? Can this, fulfill an unmet medical need? So that's how you start a drug discovery program, with that question. So what happens then is, your project gets approved and they give you money to do it and resources and people, and you have to do experiments in the lab and prove, using cell lines, in vitro reactions and cell lines and animal models, showing that actually modifying, manipulating that pathway will lead to something that eventually in a human, after you do all your testing, would turn into a therapeutic, right? That you could put in a clinical trial and then see if you can have approval to be able to market it and actually help a group of patients. That process takes about 10 years or longer, right? It's a very long process from the moment you come up with the idea and you start doing your initial experiments until you have something that is good enough to actually give it to people. Our discovery biology, right, operates at the very beginning of that, where we ask the question and we try to answer in simpler, much simpler than a human, like models, for example, in vitro, like cell lines, cancer cell lines, or we do cool things where we are very interested in muscle, neuromuscular disorders, right? Where diseases where people have either loss of muscle function. So we are able to get muscle cells in a way, right, from donors and reconstruct a muscle fiber in the lab that work as a muscle, and then on that do our intervention, which could be either modifying genes or adding molecules to it, and see if we can show that our uh, potential therapeutic has the effect that we need for that to be an effective therapeutic. So all of these kind of experimentations and also working with animal models of the disease and trying to cure, quote unquote, the disease in animals to show that this would be an effective therapeutic, and then try to work out, what is the potency that you need in this medication, and what is going to be the dosage that you're going. So a lot of these questions we ask, and all of that could be under the umbrella of what we call discovery biology. But we don't operate in a bubble. We are constantly working with groups like translational biology, right, which are the people that are looking at how this will play out from a simpler model to an animal model to a human. We work with people that do structural biology, people that do the protein science and make proteins for us to be able to test these things. We have high throughput screening to look for different molecules, and then chemistry to make all these modifications of the molecules. And then we in biology test the modifications and feed information back to chemistry. So we're always working. It's not like a stepwise, like it's not like an assembly line, that it goes from one team to another. There are at least 3, 4, 5 different company functions and teams involved at the beginning together with discovery biology, trying to move this project from what was originally a question to something that is actually a molecule that we call a clinical candidate that can now be made into an actual therapeutic in the span of like almost a decade. So it takes a long time. The industry is constantly trying to reduce that amount of time, because that's also the reason why drugs are so expensive. Imagine the investment, right, that you have to be able to recover after all those years of research and clinical trials that are not that cheap. Then you have to make a product that will sell, where you have to recover your investment and then be able to invest on the next one to be able to help the next group of patients, and so on and so forth. So it is an industry, it is a business, right? But the difficulty and length that the process takes translates into what happens at the end, which is a product that is not cheap, right? But we try to reduce the amount of time and cost at every step to be able to reach a solution for a patient faster at a lower price to increase accessibility to the medication. So we constantly work on that. But our job as discovery biologists at the beginning of those 10 years, right? The first 2, 3, sometimes 4 years of that. And we
That's
have
a great explanation.
and we have biologists mostly, right? But we also have chemists and structural biologists and people from all different disciplines that do this kind of work, not just biologists. Computational biology plays a huge role in what we do every day, right? So data science, we to find out a group of patients we want to help and to find out what's the mutation that is involved in causing this disease. There's a lot of database mining, sometimes generation of our own data to mine, to find different correlations between mutations and outcomes. And so there's a lot of computational work that goes on there. There's a lot of digital and computational work that goes on when it comes to actually making the molecules, because yes, you can test different molecules, but then you can look at the structure of your target and your molecule, and then try to make and try to predict with computers modifications to that molecule that would make it a better medicine by binding to your target better or by modifying its activity better. So that is also another huge component of what we do.
Well, that
Even
was
though I
awesome. I think
can't
students
do
will be very interested
anything
in that.
beyond Excel and PowerPoint, but we have people who actually know a lot about it.
Well, those are all my questions, unless anyone else has any more questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Murad, for coming and sharing your education and career journey with our students. And
Thank
I'll
you
let
for
you know
having
if
me.
anyone has follow-up questions, because that
Of
was
course.
really interesting. So,
Of course, they
thank
can find
you.
me on LinkedIn with my name.
Okay.
And if anyone wants to connect and have any questions, I'm more than happy to connect.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.